if you can't tell, like I'm anxious to start drinking because it's like technically it's sort of like my nighttime, even though it's like noon over here or 11 a.m. over here.
So you really work US hours in Australia?
Yeah, I just live like a vampire. And honestly, I don't know if you're on Clubhouse, but because I'm on Clubhouse, a lot of people are from the US. So sometimes I have to like, even if I'm like end a day early, meaning it ends up at 6 a.m. my time, like I had to wait until 8 a.m. just to go in like one of the rooms and I'm interested in just to ask questions to investors or talk to different people. So like Clubhouse is
Is it a US thing only right now, or?
no, it's global. It's just like a majority of the people on it are from the US.
When are you going to come back?
Whenever the pandemic is over. US is the best place to get the vaccine, though. Not in terms of, sorry, 1 second. How the pandemic has been handled, but in terms of like getting the vaccine, I think US is doing probably better than most.
Yeah, I'm drinking tequila.
Oh, you are? I'm not a fan of. Oh, sorry, I'm just trying to. Okay. 1 second.
I was really looking forward to this, not because I wanted to catch up with you.
Yeah.
After this whole week, I just wanted to drink.
I bet.
So,
oh my God. Yeah, I'm going to catch up with you. I'm not a huge fan of tequila.
Me neither, to be honest. So I'm just trying to finish this bottle.
I like it. Well, cheers.
Cheers. I'm so glad to have you on this because the minute that we talked about this was what, a month and a half ago?
Yeah.
Just literally built the site within a day and started doing it. So one thing I realized, or my learning experience for myself, was I think this is my first time I feel like I have the full startup experience, in a sense that as a startup, you have to do things fast and dirty sometimes to get it started. But to be able to build that momentum is just, hey, create something, be consistent about it, and push it out there and learn how to make it perfect on the go. But at least you have something to work with. So I appreciate you for that, Jen.
Well, I appreciate you too.
Yeah. And speaking of which, I read The Alchemist. I actually finished it within a week. I would read it at night and I loved it. It's something that I've always heard about the book, how it was a required reading for my friends. But I felt if it wasn't for reading it this year at the point of my life, I don't think I would have got as much as I wanted out of it. And when I came across all the things that it's part of the book, which I'm sure we'll talk about, I was like, well, shit, this is really cool. And I can see, and I love to learn why you love the book. Is this your favorite book?
Yeah, and I'm in this already, but I don't read fiction. Like I'm not a fiction person, except for Harry Potter. So because you would have to be a monster not to like Harry Potter. But it's when I was really unhappy in New York, which I can kind of get into later, but like just really didn't like the fact that like I was just
Are you
chasing
from
after
New York?
clouds. No, I'm from the West Coast originally, and I also lived in Korea. I went to international school. So I moved back and forth between Seoul and California when I was young. And then I moved to New York when I was 17 to go to NYU.
You went to college pretty early too.
Yeah, NYU. And honestly, it was just like, you know how like I kind of knew I wanted to do something in business, but didn't really know exactly what. And my dad really wanted me to be a banker. So I went to NYU.
Your dad wanted you to be a banker?
Yeah, really wanted me.
Is he a banker?
No, he's a CFO. He's just retired, but he wasn't. He tried to get me like an internship, banking internship, which he did when I was my sophomore year in college, and I just absolutely hated it. And after like about maybe 8-9 years of just going after jobs that are like good on resume, but I didn't really like or enjoy, I just decided to pack up.
Why
and
didn't you
leave.
enjoy it?
I don't know. It wasn't that like, it was basically just kind of, I felt a little bit like, I don't know, restricted in a sense that I was basically, it's hard to explain, but basically I felt like I got to a point where I was like, I don't even know what I want. because I never really allow myself to think about that or make decisions based on that factor.
What
It
did you
was more
major
just
in?
finance and accounting.
Okay. And
But
so
I went
you
to like,
learned the language of business.
yeah, and I went for like Big Four, went into consulting, and then I was like, oh, I want to go into in-house strategy so I can move up. And then I took this job that had a great title, which is chief of staff. So it came with a lot of great responsibilities, but it was not really something I enjoyed. And then I actually ended up getting an offer from Goldman Sachs, which is would have made my dad super happy. And I love the MD that I interviewed with and everything. Like we're both like org design nerds, and we like geeked out for 2 hours during an interview. And then like when they made me an offer, I just had this breakdown. I was just like, I can't like live like this. Like I'm just going after this job because Goldman Sachs, it's a great name. It looks great on your resume. And I was just like, but I'm so unhappy. So I ended up just packing up and leaving within 3 months and decided to move to Australia, somewhere super far away. And it's
Did you know anyone in Australia?
and I might have maybe like three to five friends here.
Why Australia out of all the places? Was it like literally turn the globe and whatever is the
Like
opposite?
somewhere I don't have to, like somewhere where I speak the language,
Yeah.
where I assume culturally I'll be able to fit in, be easier. And Australia is beautiful. It's a beautiful country. Have you been?
No, YJ doesn't travel.
No, that's
No.
unfortunate.
But
You're
maybe I will.
your mentor for a travel company.
Yeah, no. After reading The Alchemist and talking to a lot of people who there's people that you, like within a few minutes you realize you're from the same tribe, in a sense of the way that you think, the things that you're passionate about, the things that frustrates all of us. And there is a person that I met recently who was also the same way, age of 18, went to Canada, didn't know anyone, was someone who, and it's just fascinating living or hearing their stories about like that. I don't know if I had the courage, but after talking with you and a bunch of other people, I would
Yeah.
love to do like a solo date or just, screw it. Just pick a place.
Yeah, but it doesn't
Don't
have
think
to be
about
that
it.
dramatic, right? It doesn't have to be like, oh my God, I'm gonna go on this like 3 month, backpacking trip. It doesn't have to be that grand. It's just there's something to it. Like when you're kind of alone, you're not going to Miami for a spring break kind of thing. Like you're kind of alone traveling around. Like you meet people in a much more intimate way and you like interact in a way you would never if you were like just with like friends or people you knew. And the reason the Alchemist book actually, my best friend gave it to me as I was leaving, and she put a little letter inside of it, inside the book. So
When did you read it?
I was on the plane leaving New York, which was
Okay.
very emotional to begin with because New York is the first city where I stay for longer than 5 years. So it's my home, it's my base, and leaving was really hard. And like she put like a little letter inside, and basically it was like, this book really helped me when I left New York and she moved to LA. So hopefully it will do the same for you. Love the fact that you're doing this. Like don't doubt yourself, kind of thing. And then you read the book, but it's a children's book, right? I don't know. Did you read the author's what's like the letter in the beginning?
I think I don't remember if it was from a letter or just from my personal research, but how he was trying to get this published and how
Yeah, that really, I don't know why, but that was memorable to me. I know that's not part of the story, but and the way he kind of talks about it is the fact, because initially it's like a children's book and people kind of like, I don't really know what this is. There's like a king, like this boy is just like walking around, like just traveling to, the shepherd boy is like just traveling to Egypt. And then he was just like, but when people actually started reading it, there's like a universal truth to it. And that's why I started gaining the level of traction that it did. Because when some people, at least some people, got started and actually read the book, it was kind of easy for them to relate to that and then talk to other people about it, whatever. And that was just really, when I was like kind of designing Levantr, the product, like my product, like I thought about that a lot. In terms of the essence of that. It's something that because people are kind of normally opposed to any change or something new, especially nowadays when you're inundated with information. But Yeah, I love that author. And the story is just so, it's so cheesy, but in such a powerful way, right? It's like one of those.
What would you say would be your favorite? Like at one moment when you realized this book was more than just a children's book.
Good question. I think it was when how he on his way to Egypt, like he gets like sidetracked because he starts working at this crystal shop, right? And he basically has some because he gets robbed, right? So he has to like work somewhere to
Figure out how to
earn the
earn some
money
money.
back.
Yep.
Yeah, to pay for his journey there. And he's there for a year. And like that part, I was just like, oh, everybody could relate to that, right? You have a
Yep.
plan. You're like, oh, like I have a path, the
Helping them
resources to
expand
get
their
there.
business, becoming really
Yeah.
successful.
Yeah. And then you're like, oh shit. But you don't forget about it. But like a year is a long time for you to get sidetracked and still kind of, I don't know, keep your eye on the ball, right? I think that's when I was starting to kind of be like, this book when I was really kind of captivated.
And so you went to Australia. Did you have a plan, or were you?
No, really. I wanted to bartend. I've always wanted to bartend. You can imagine my Asian parents' reaction when they're just like, you're chief of staff and you're gonna go bartend in Australia. And I was like, no, not as like
You got an offer from Goldman Sachs. What
yeah,
are
he's
you
like, what are
doing?
you doing? And I was just like, are you having a mental breakdown? I was like, no, I'm like sober as hell. But I'm just saying, like,
What were you thinking? Hey, I'll be a traveling bartender. I'll be able to go wherever I want to earn some cash.
not even that. I was just like, because I got all my savings and I was like, I'm just gonna travel for a year, take a bunch of classes. I don't care if it's relevant to my field, whatever. I just want to do what I want to do, right? Follow my curiosity. And bartending, actually, I've always wanted to do it because everyone that I know who's super calm under pressure, like they were like bartenders at one point. Bartending is really hard. You have to kind of think about if you don't mix, you know how this is a random side note, but you know, old fashioned, it looks simple, but timing is like really important. So you can't take your time. It has to be like really fast. Otherwise it melts and it doesn't like blend well, whatever. So when you're getting multiple orders, you have to kind of think about a lot of different elements and say, what is a process? How do I lay out the ingredients so that the drinks I make are not like watered down or, you know, what I have to make it again or whatever it is, like the most efficient way possible. It's like creating like an on-demand assembly line every time you get an order. So, and people are annoying. Drunk people are annoying. People are annoying when they're not drunk and add alcohol to that mix. They're super annoying, right? So like you have to do that while entertaining people, trying to be polite, right? Keep the conversation light. I mean, it's a lot. And I always thought like people who were bartenders tend to be just very calm. Yeah. That's why I wanted to be a
Did you feel
bartender.
like you were a calm person, or was it more, hey, I thought about being bartending or doing bartending because that was something I'd love to learn how to do?
Yeah, it was more, I don't think I'm a calm person. Like I'm calm in the face of a disaster, like something like, you know what I mean? Like ship sinking, like something crazy, like crazy big. But yeah, I'm more like, because I'm so high energy, like kind of person, it cuts both ways, right? So I get antsy sometimes, like if things are not moving at the pace I want. And that's something that I've been working on for years of getting better and better at it. Talk to my therapist about it. Also kind of open about that. Like it's a flaw. And yeah, so I just thought, oh, maybe being a bartender will force me to accelerate my learning.
I love it.
If that makes
So
sense.
you went to Australia with some plan to be a bartender. How'd that turn out?
I went to this bar called Udabi on my first night here. Met the bar, I was there by myself. That was probably one of two times where went to a bar by myself and just befriended the staff. And they were super helpful. They're like, hey, obviously I couldn't work there because it was such a nice cocktail bar. They're not hiring some random inexperienced.
From the States.
Yeah. Like they're like, have you ever made drinks? I was like, nope. I was like, I don't really even like, and they actually tried, they're like, do you know how to like pour like a craft beer properly? And I was like, the fact that I don't know what that question means no. I don't know what you're asking. And they were super helpful, like trying to like, they're like, hey, you should join this group. Here's how you here are the places you can go to get a job. And I did for a little bit, but then I soon kind of quit because like I don't know. I was just taking classes and I was just like, I don't really feel like, I don't like the fact that I'm making drinks that I cannot drink.
Well, it seems like you learn what you want to get out of it, and then you're just like, well, I also realized I couldn't drink.
You know how sometimes you go hiking and you're like, oh, this was a mistake, I want to go back, and then going back is going to be just as painful because you're literally like halfway in between.
Yeah,
that's how I felt.
So what happened? You stopped, and then you're just like, well, now I'm stuck.
Like,
Did COVID hit at that point, or that was before COVID too? So,
yeah, way before.
Okay.
Yeah. I just traveled, and I think one of the main reasons was I've always wanted to learn about blockchain. So I signed up for an MIT blockchain program, and that was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life, because the program is for like senior developers and some system background people who want to kind of transition into blockchain and understand the business models around it. And I have zero like coding background. So I'm like trying to understand like the basic technical, like foundational stuff as I'm trying to apply that to blockchain. And the instructor was really mean. So like I worked like 18 hours a day just to catch up with the coursework. It was super interesting. And I think I did, like, I learned how to code. All that stuff took time. It was super fun. Well, you already know you're very technically savvy. But,
not really, a little bit, sure.
Built a website in a day.
Well, no, it's just, I think like you, it's just, you find something that you're fascinated with, that you just want to understand how it works, but you don't necessarily want to, once you start learning, oh, wow, now I know the depth in which this rabbit hole goes. Yeah. I don't want to jump in it. I just want to see how deep it goes. That's it. I think that's the best metaphor I can use. Is like, I see all these rabbit holes. I just want to know how deep it goes, but I'm not going to jump in it. Yeah, you're going to stick your head in, just kind of be like, get a sense of it. Stick my head in and just get like a 1-foot ladder just so I can say I experienced it. So. When I was learning like JavaScript, right? And there was this Why? I don't even know JavaScript. Because I was just like, I want to learn how to code. Because I think Steve Jobs said that everybody should learn how to code because it teaches you how to think, and of him. So you did this because of his Steve Jobs quote? Yeah. But I've always been curious because like I was in strategy where everything takes forever to see any result. You know, like if you want to see the impact of things, it takes forever in a very corporate, high enterprise environment. Whereas like coding is you do something, like I put up a cat picture, I see it like right here, like right away, right? So there's something so satisfying to that. So, and I'm a very impatient person, so I was like, this is perfect for me. So I started doing it. And then one of the projects, like assignments, was like to create like this memory game. And it's like super hard. It's like you have these cards, and then each card like it has like different shapes or whatever animations on it, and then you flip and try to remember where things are so you can find 2 cards in a row. So like matching, pairing. Yeah. And there's an animation component of you click on something. There's like a logic where you click, it turns, and you know that took me 50 hours to create. And when it started working, I cried. I literally sat there and cried. Yeah. So you were learning. So did you like just stop learning that, or did you? I don't know. Like, what did you get out of learning JavaScript? Nothing. And that was the point. That like I'm gonna learn stuff that I have no idea. Again, to quote Steve Jobs, he said like dots don't connect when you're looking backward. They only connect when you're dots don't connect when you're looking forward. And they only connect when you're looking backwards. So just follow your heart because it always knows where you need to go. So I was just like, I'm just gonna do whatever that I'm curious about. And I also learn how to do like SQL database coding sort of from my data analytics class at General Assembly. And I was like, I'm never gonna use this. I got hired by Uber, and the fact that I knew how to SQL
came in super handy. I was like one of maybe 3 to 4 people in our entire organization, in my organization, that knew how to do that. So I think when there are like delays from the data team, I'm like, especially during COVID, I was like, fuck it, I'm just gonna do it myself. And that came in really handy. And the fact that I knew how to code meant like when I was building my startup, like I had a better understanding of like technical architecture, like system architecture, like tech debt, like how to set that up. I'm familiar with where to go to understand what. They all kind of paid off in the end. I just didn't know, back then as it was happening.
You're definitely more technical than I am. So I'm just going to leave that there. And
I don't think
also,
so. You found a smarter way. I found the harder way, basically.
well, I'm also really lazy too. So
That's the best. You know what they say, like if you want to get something done quickly, give it to like lazy people.
yeah. So, but no, if you tell people that, then everyone's just going to give it to all the lazy people.
Yeah, you.
You don't want to inherently do anything. I guess I'm really curious because to your point, there are certain things that like I enjoy learning, and then until later on I realize, oh wow, this finally paid off. What would you say is probably one of the biggest things that I guess maybe you learned that you didn't realize would help something that you're working on now, or something that helped you before?
Yeah,
If that makes
that's
sense.
so this is kind of, I mean, I think all the examples I gave before are part of it, but one thing that I was like truly surprised by, it was really unexpected, was because coding, you can argue that if you're in tech, like it's going to come in handy at some point, right? Understanding, like having some technical knowledge. But I started ghostwriting for like random blog sites on behalf of brands and clients because I wanted to improve my writing skill, and it was just fun. You get paid to do like something simple. It doesn't take that long.
When did you start ghostwriting?
I think it was like 2019 when I like left New York, and I was like, oh, I just want a very chill side gig that I could do here and there whenever I want. And I found that. And then I did that throughout, like for like a while, like a year and a half, not consistently all the time, especially when I was at Uber, I had no time to do that. But it was just like, it was fun. And then I was just like, I'm never gonna, this is never, this is never gonna come in handy. And then like when I started my own company, and then I started talking about PR, I was like, I had ideas in terms of, I was like, oh, understood like guest posting, things like that. Then I understand like how you can guest post, and like the rules around the guidelines you have to follow in order to make sure that you get selected, and the positioning, because I had to do that, right, for clients.
You had to compete for that.
Yeah. So if I was consistently bad at that, then I would have just gotten fired. And I'm like, you know what I mean? So like I understood that. And that kind of gave me probably a lot of like more stronger knowledge around PR and branding, as well as copywriting. Content marketing, yeah. Where a lot of founders struggle with. I'm not saying I'm an expert at all. It just gave me a much better starting point.
Which I think is important, because at least you understand enough about it to know if someone's screwing you over.
Yeah. And I get contacted by, obviously, when the moment you say you're registered as a startup, like companies find you, like PR firms find you, and social media service people find you. And the thing is, I can kind of tell, and that's my job as a founder, right? My job isn't to do everything. At the moment, my job is doing everything, but because you don't have resources to hire a bunch of people. But I think it's more, the best thing to do is have enough knowledge to be like, is this good? Is this person good? Is this, how do I screen? How do I filter? How do I, verify?
Let me also ask about your corporate experience. Was there a portion of your corporate experience, because you worked for Uber and a bunch of big four companies?
Thomson Reuters, and for KPMG. It's one of the big four, yeah.
Is there a particular experience or something that you learned through working with corporate that has been helpful for you in your startup with Levantr?
Yeah, of course. A lot of things I learned. Let me give you one positive, very polished example, and another one that's more,
or things like you learn not to do, right?
Yeah. But like and they're all true. When I say, I don't mean polished as in like I'm lying. But like, it's basically, I learned about product design because I was at Thomson Reuters. I was running a strategy project that was initially, so the COO who I reported to came to me and said, hey, there's this, to me, what seems like a simple project that's failed 3 times. already. Can you take over and revive it? And it was just basically like to improve customer experience. There was some of the, by like enhancing or adding like additional like channels, like chat or something, right? Super simple. It's like, okay. So I look into it, and this, because Thomson Reuters is like Bloomberg, it's like a desktop terminal for like market data. Like, it's not that simple. Like, people need support at different times in different format, rather than just contacting support. Like, it needs to be embedded in the design of the product itself. So that's the simplest way that I can put that. And I went, because I've spent, like, I was like, hey, I'm going to spend 2 months evaluating why this project has failed so many times. And then that's what I found out. And I basically, and mind you, I had no experience with design thinking. I didn't know what that was. I'm just kind of following what seems to be a logical conclusion. And I was just like, hey, I think that we need to actually take a step back here, talk about the customer experience itself, and then actually work through different problems that our customers need solved, and then let that help us determine exactly where the solution or support needs to reside. And then as I'm kind of doing this, I got introduced to UX. I didn't know what UX was back then, like user experience team. Can you believe that, how crazy that is? Like, that I work with 50 something people in the company, like 50 something leaders, right? Some of them were from like the product, like they were like product, the team leads for the product teams or whatever, product managers. They never mentioned to me that there's a UX team. Like, I had to find out. That was insane to me. I was just like, how is it like you guys never mentioned? You guys sit next to each other. And then I reached out to them, and then we became like this unofficial team. Like, we worked on every project together, even if we weren't officially assigned to it. It's like we were just always working through, because what we realized is like what they're doing is determining the product innovation strategy based on customer feedback, right?
Yeah.
And what I'm doing is trying to basically make the company's products more viable. So if anything, like, we need to be combined. We need to be, part of the same team.
Do you find that as something common where a lot of teams are very siloed and they're just not communicating with each other?
And what I realize is that, and the more I learn about design thinking, and the more I realize how difficult it is for big corporations to be agile. Design thinking has been around for over a decade, right? And when we introduced this to Thomson Reuters, it was an uphill battle. We had to use a lot of tricks to get senior, not to freak people out. And once we kind of proved like that this methodology works, they were like, oh my God, this is a new way of doing things. And I was like, actually, I would love to take that credit, but it's been around for a decade, man. Like, you just haven't been paying attention to it. And it just goes to show, because they don't really have an incentive, right, to keep looking for reasons to change or reasons to disrupt what they already have.
Would you say that's probably the biggest thing, is just like the way in which the team members are compensated doesn't really allow for collaboration?
No, I think it was more just like me learning about, I think it was learning about, how do I put this? Learning about how to apply. Well, here's the thing. You can't just be like, hey, you can't go to your boss and say that, you can't go to your boss and say that, like, hey, let's just use this like random methodology you've never heard of, and then give me $2,000 so I can use it to do user testing. Like, they're going to be like, what? No. Right. So what happens a lot of times is you look at best practices based on like design thinking, how to design a product. Right. And you have to actually compromise and then figure out how to apply it to your setting because you're in a very restrictive environment. People are not going to let you, go fully innovative or creative. So I had to learn how to do it in like
manage change.
Piecemeal kind of way, while still trying to deliver the same outcome. That's challenging. And I think that really pushed me to learn, and it proved immensely valuable when I was building a startup, because I had to, you have to compromise. You can never do it in the ideal way. Right.
No, it's really interesting, because one thing I think I've learned recently is, as a founder, you're really limited, because even though you could have this willingness to learn everything in the world and to do everything, you don't have the time to. Your customers aren't waiting for you. Your competitors aren't going to wait for you. Even corporate's not going to wait for you. So you don't have this capacity, even if you have the desire and willingness to learn everything and to do everything, it's still going to take you time to build out the code, build out the platform, create the content so that your customers will know what you're doing. And so you need to get help. But how would you manage the help, and how would you prioritize your time to make sure they work on the right thing?
Yeah, definitely. Right. Like it's also there's no right answer for a lot of questions that you have as a startup. Because I'll ask this question multiple times. I was like, what is a metric that we should focus on? No matter who I ask, they're like, well, depends on you though. It's at the end of the day, it's your decision. I'm like, no, I know it's my decision. I'm asking you as an expert, give me some guidance. And you have limited resources. So every day, like you're making trade-offs. And
who do you ask for help when you started this? Who are the people that you relied on, or the people that you like to rely on?
I think obviously like mentors like you're my mentor. My friends who've been through it before. I have two close friends that have successfully launched and scaled their startups. They were super helpful. And sometimes, to be honest, I crowdsourced it. So I'll just go to Y Combinator Startup School forums and just ask. And a bunch of people responded. Very helpful. The thing about entrepreneur community is it's such a lonely journey that every single person, especially if you've been successful, has gotten help from a lot of different people. So there's this tendency to want to give back. So it's very responsive. People are always trying to help you. I actually met this guy, Brandon, because I posted something and he was super helpful and like trying to help me out with some legal question. And we're super close to this day. So like, it's more just finding whatever forms and use this like scream it into the void and just see what comes back, to be honest. And surprisingly, in this community, a lot comes back when you just ask.
It reminds me of, I think one of my favorite quotes from the book was, when you want something, the universe will conspire to get it to you.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's different from, I don't know what you think, but you know how like the secret thing where they're like, oh, if you put your mind to it, like you call it and then it will happen. It's different from that. You know what I mean? Like that, I don't think it's like that weird, ooh, if I believe anything can happen kind of thing. No, it's if you really want it, you're going to find the right people. You're going to give up that buy. You're going to go to the right sites, and all these things will add up and start this chain reaction.
Yeah. It's something I really appreciate you for pushing me to read a book. It's something that I've always came across and I'm like, oh, it was required reading in some school, so it probably sucks. Honestly, that's how I felt about it. I was like, oh, it's required reading. It's probably dumb. But
it's so good, right? It's like
it was
that.
Great.
And normally it's the other way around. It's normally you like giving me like a list of books that I should read. And I'm just like, I'm still working through the other list you gave me the other day.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So do you remember that book, like The Giver or whatever? Like in 8th grade where
The Utopia.
Yeah. I really like that book. But The Alchemist is just insane. There are two books that I read that people are like, every time I recommend it, they're like The Alchemist and When Things Fall Apart.
What's that?
It sounds like a self-help book, and there's a really funny story of like how I got introduced to that book. But it's basically this this woman who is a Buddhist, and she like after some shit. Am I allowed to curse?
Yeah.
Here? But after some shit like happened in her life, like she left her home, and like in some suburban area in America, and then moved to India. And basically followed this like Buddhist teacher, and she writes about the origin of human suffering. And if you just read some of the quotes like out of context, they sound really depressing. I've read it to my friends and they're like, are you like depressed? Like, these are really sad. I was like, no, because like you're hearing it out of context. But if you actually read the book, it's so uplifting. It talks about like our fear of like groundlessness, and that's causes us a lot of sorrow and pain. It's such a good book. If you're ever going through a hard time, I would even
Does
if you
it talk
are,
about like control or losing control?
sort of, but like it talks about it in such a structured, principled way. It's not this la la la. We gotta be okay with losing control. It's not like that. It's very like philosophical and like logical in a way. The way she writes it, and it resonates so much, like so much. Yeah.
What are the things that are the most interesting for you to learn? Because it seems like you find a lot of interest in a lot of different things. Is there a genre to the next chapter that you're writing for your life?
I just like human, like behavioral economics, which I think is a pretty common interest. I actually took a neuroscience class when I was freshman in college because I thought that it sounded more like psychology than like science. And I hated science in high school. So I was just like, oh, okay, like this sounds easy. Like I only have to take science course once in my freshman year. I'm just gonna pick something that sounds like it talks about like the curriculum and like the syllabus made it sound like it's about drugs. You learn how like drugs affect your brain and like psychology and blah 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 fun stuff. It was fucking hard. I was like, this is like biology, like chemistry, physics all combined. This is the worst thing I've ever like done. And it
Does it
was
talk
so
about like
awful.
different brain parts and what they do, and then the
Oh
different
my God, it
neurotransmitter
was,
chemical?
yes, it was so crazy. But like when I was doing, it was so insane. I was like, this class is awful. And the professor was so difficult. But I learned so much about like just human brain and just there's so many interesting things about that. And then that really kind of triggered my fascination with like human brain and behavior. And that came in really handy. Like I just like understanding why. And I like asking questions because I do a lot of user interviews, not just for my startup, but as a go-to-market consultant. And technically I can train somebody else to actually do the interviews. But I actually love doing it because people are so weird. And like I
People
think,
aren't normal. They're weird. And I want
yeah,
to know
there's
why.
so weird. And then I could be like, oh, YJ's so cool. We connect. He's a cool guy. He creates customized board game pieces and stuff. Like, that's cool. We connect. But if I were to do like user interview to understand like why you do certain things the way you do it, I'll be like, man, he's weird. And that's just people. Everyone's like that. So it's just fascinating. So that's kind of something I
Is there
study a
someone
lot.
that was you were most surprised, or someone that you're just like, I love to dig into, and how your brain was formed?
I think there are a few people, mind you, these are normally like, I don't know, there are a few people that are like, oh my God. Like one was at Thomson Reuters, I was interviewing this trader, a New York trader, like typical hardcore, fast paced. And we are interviewing and we're showing, I was just testing something out. And I wanted to show him like the onboarding as part of it, which was supposed to like last maybe 2 minutes. And he basically, and the first page was signing up, like a login page, sort of, right? Where you just create an account. That was it. And mind you, he already has an account with Thomson Reuters, so I don't understand. So like I show him that page and he has such an emotional reaction. Like he was just like, why are you asking me to create a password, create an account when I haven't, like theoretically, right? I haven't seen your product yet. And I was so flabbergasted. Like I was like, what? And I was like, oh, sorry, like that's not a big deal. And he was like, it's just we're on a first date and you're asking me to marry you. And I was just like, it was such an extreme reaction. And then we spent like 20 minutes talking about it. And after that, I was just like, initially, I was just like, I was just like, maybe this guy was just really weird. And I was like, no, nobody has a meltdown like that for no reason in the middle of a professional interview. I listened to that conversation maybe 15 times over and over again, looked at how he uses it, what products he uses, and then realized that there's a lot of frustration for bankers and people like end users for a lot of B2B products where they don't have a say in the product that they use. So basically, like me as a vendor, like Thomson Reuters as a vendor only deals with like senior level people. We wine and dine them, right? Take them to clubs, take them
Because
to
they're
nice
the one
restaurants.
paying.
Yeah, and then they're the ones, and they feel like the brands that they use, right? Like they don't really care about them, and it's just like a pent up anger. And I was just like, that is it took us a while to get to that conclusion, but when we did, and we were like, obviously, let's like test this out, like it worked. And I think that was such an interesting insight because he was really upset. Like it was just, and mind you, that page has like no context. It was just like a sign up kind of page. I think those are kind of the cases. When I was interviewing like someone for Levantr, I was supposed to show somebody like a prototype. It was like supposed to be like a prototype testing. And this guy is talking talking a lot and like talking to me about how he plans travel. And he's like, my friend and his fiance broke up because of like issues around lack of planning, because like, they basically didn't like plan it out. Like, and I was just like, this can't be real. And he like shows me like their WhatsApp conversation about this incident where they get into a screaming match, like in Japan or somewhere, or Mexico. It was Mexico. And then because like they didn't plan it properly, and then apparently like, things went
Started
south.
arguing and start
Yeah, and
digging
then
up
they
these
broke
skeletons
up.
in the closet. It's like, hey, what?
And it's just, I was just like, what? I was like, that is crazy. So he's like showing me like how, and I was just like, okay, like,
Hey, this could be your value prop. It's like, hey,
yeah,
with this Levantr
stay
tool,
married.
yeah,
Yeah,
stay married.
yeah,
Stop having arguments.
yeah. It was just so random. I was like, can you tell me what they were fighting about? And then I was like, I want this like conversation recorded like word by word, line by line. And then he
Because this
was
is going on my marketing campaign and Valentine's Day. So, it's like Valentine's Day. Hey, think about planning a trip for your honeymoon. Hey, stay together by not having arguments about where to go.
Do you remember that? What's that website called? The Canadian website that promoted like life is short, have an affair. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Maybe, but feel
It was
free to
basically
remind
like a
me.
site where you meet, like you're just like for people who try looking for like extramarital affairs, and
Oh yeah, a long time. Yeah,
yeah, and then like it got hacked, and then all the names got released. But it's like that, but opposite. Like we're trying to keep it together. You know what I mean? It's like that effective, like marketing. So like it's, and this guy is like showing me how, I was like, okay, let's find a, like, where do you want to go next? Let's plan a trip together so I can like them introduce a prototype to see how you interact with it.
that's a marketing ad right there.
Yeah. And you know what he did? He was like, "Oh, let me just do this. I want to go to the Olympics and do that." And he starts like planning this trip, and he pulls up his template, like this custom design Excel template. Not from like a previous trip, just like a random table, like a template specifically. He has for trip expenses and then calendar. He created his own calendar template and showed me how yeah. And it was just so crazy. We never even got to the prototype. We never,
No,
I
that's
was just like, I'm just
awesome.
gonna let this guy talk.
This it reminds me of those like really those Asian advertisements like in other countries in which it's like this whole story and you don't know it's an ad until the very end. Do you know what
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
talking about? Those like Thailand or yeah, it's oh you can do this and then you'll get skinny and meet the guy of your dreams or something and it's his coffee.
yeah. No, no, no. Like they have that like this pretty girl like is like walking in the street, and she goes into this restaurant because it's raining and she's hungry.
Yeah.
And then it kind of seems like it's talking about like human like warmth and like connection. And it's like an ad about soju. It's like this Korean alcohol, which just tastes horrible. It's like
Yeah.
tastes like rubbing alcohol. And I was just like, what? You like, I feel like emotionally like manipulated. Like, what the hell was that? Like, I was just like, oh my God, that's so
Now
nice.
you
She's
want some
like,
soju. You're
yeah,
gonna
it's like, let's get drunk. It's an ad, like to get people drunk. I was like, this is not right. This is
I
not
love
right.
it because part of it is kind of going back to your business or your journey, which you freshman year you were interested in psych and you took this neuroscience class. You were majoring in finance and accounting, so this was complete. This is elective.
Yeah.
Doesn't
Forced
count for
elective.
anything. Yeah,
Yeah.
forced elective. But you could have chosen anything else to take,
Well, I was
and yeah,
one of the best decisions I've ever made. I also minored in studio art to make myself a little bit more interesting. Because I was like, I look so boring.
so
It's
you're
like,
conscious of it. Hey, I'm just gonna study finance and accounting. I'm gonna be this like gray suited like person.
yeah. And I don't know. I feel like are you into photography? I feel like you're kind of an artistic person.
For me, if you were to ask me what was that one skill that I picked up that helped me my whole life, it was photography. I was
Really?
really shy and I didn't like being in front of camera. And I remember asking my parents for a camera because I just wanted to take photos. And then second, my second time was she actually bought me a DSLR, and I didn't know how poor we were because my parent was making like 20 grand a year as a student ed assistant. So like buying a $600 DSLR was not something that, and I really appreciate for it. And one thing I learned about photography was I think I don't really consider myself a very creative person, but being able to see things in new perspectives, and as cliched as it sounds, it was like, look, the world is out there. You have everyone sees the same thing, but being able to take a camera and figure out how can you make the thing that you're looking at in the best light possible. And that's something I learned through photography, and something that I think when I talk to people and look at the way I approach business and what I'm doing for my work is like, how can I make this even better? Even if it's even if we're stuck in the same process, how can we make it fun, or how can we make it different and make it stand out and show people in their best light? So it's something in which like photography, I want to say, was probably my first hobby and something that taught me a lot of things that I didn't even think about learning. I'm not a great photographer, but it helped me in a lot of aspects of my life, which I can attribute back to photography.
How old were you when you first got your camera?
I was middle school, maybe.
Wow, you got into it early.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when they bought me a DSLR, I was like, well, I have to use it now because it's expensive. But I was never a good photographer. I just knew I enjoyed taking pictures of things. And I remember watching a movie, though, called Up in the Air with George Clooney.
Yeah.
You love it? Dude, I watched it and I was like, I want that job.
Firing people, or
firing people, traveling and firing, because it's interesting because your first, I mean, the whole one of my favorite clips was the part where he was going to airport and was, hey, let's get behind Asian people.
Yeah.
Efficient.
And I was like, that's right.
Yeah.
We're efficient. Yeah, we are.
I'm like my grandmother. I stereotype because it makes life easier.
Yeah. Like that's why Asian like clothing, everything has so many pockets. It's like it's very like.
Yeah, don't get behind old people because they never appreciate how little they have left in life. Don't get behind people with kids because strollers never collapse in less than 20 minutes. And Asian, there you go. Have a thing for slip-on shoes.
That's racist. He's it's not racist.
Yeah.
Positive racism.
Which is funny because like whenever I travel, it's like we all wear slip-on shoes. It's like, hey, you have to take it off. So I watched a show, and I think why I liked it so much was it was interesting. He had this like whole philosophy, and he had this quote. It's like, oh yeah, pictures are for people who don't remember. I was like, oh crap, I have tons of pictures. But I think what made me fascinated with that movie a lot was when you're at your lowest point, how to like the things that he said to try to uplift them and just change your perspectives on things. It's always interesting for me. I think about my job is when you're meeting customers in person, when someone hates your company for something that you didn't do, but being able to convince them that, hey, if you give me a second chance, it's not going to be that way. Plus, I wasn't here 20 years ago. So
yeah, they love you.
Yeah.
And it's also context, right? Most of the time we are acting and reacting, right? That's what humans like do. And so same picture you took, right? Like you can go back, notice something you haven't noticed, or because you're in a certain mood or a certain context or whatever, it looks different. You're adding stuff to it. And it's like this thing that this like anchor that you can keep returning back to almost like test and see how you've grown and what you've learned. And I think that's what's great about taking a lot of pictures. I have so many pictures that I never look at. Once in a while, I'll like randomly go through the phone and just have, this is amazing kind of moment.
And you're from New York, so do you Humans of New York?
I love that.
I think his name Brent. I was so inspired by him, and what fascinated me the most about him is just regular people, but they all have something to share that was unique to them. And to your point, something weird about them, and you like to find out like why are they this way? Why are they weird?
Like, why are you so weird? And the thing is, everybody's kind of like different. Like because I moved around like myself, and also I went to international school where most of my friends are diplomats kids, so they're constantly going in and out, right? So for me, like people leaving, going in and out, I'm like not very attached to it. Like, I didn't cry when I left New York. I was emotional, but some of my friends are more emotional than I was. I'm just
They were crying. Hey, Jen,
yeah,
I'm gonna
this
miss
is
you so
awkward. I'm
much.
just like, okay.
Here's a farewell party, and you're like, all right, bye guys, are we done yet? I'm ready to go. My flight leaves in an hour now. So-
Yeah, and like it's like normal. Like people come and go, and I'm very good at handling that. And but the thing is, what I noticed is that, but because I have that kind of personality, like I don't hold on to people like whoever I'm like right next to that much. Like I don't cling on to them. So that allows me to then talk to different people. Like for instance, I went to Kangaroo Island. If you ever come, if I'm still here and you come visit, I'll take you to Kangaroo Island. But
okay.
it's just like what it is. Like it's like this beautiful island where just like you basically interact with these animals like without any barriers. It's not a zoo. They have something called like Seal Bay where you just walk up. You're just like walking along the beach with the seals just kind of like laying around. It's just they can get aggressive. You have to like keep your distance a little bit, but it's such a cool place, right? So I went there when I was traveling across Australia by myself, and that was like my first solo trip. I did a lot of research and didn't realize that you had to rent a car. I thought it looked like there was like a bus or some kind of transportation available. Anyway, so basically I'm stranded at this terminal, and I was like, okay, let me just like go back to the main island. And then they're like, oh, it was at 10 a.m. They're like, the next ferry is at 5 p.m. I was like, I have to stay here for 7 hours. They're like, yeah. I was like, okay. Okay, and then they felt bad, so they called up a bunch of different tour operators, and then like
Oh,
try to find me somebody that could like just drive me around the island, and found this guy who would do it for $200 or $300, whatever it was. I was like, oh, that's so nice. And I've never met him. He's like a middle-aged like white dude, like from Australia, from Kangaroo Island, where there's 5,000 people. We have nothing in common. And what's really awkward about that whole thing is that that island is so big that you are spending most of your time just in a car going from point A to point B. So we're just like in the car for 45 minutes, right? Every time we have to like try to go somewhere new. And then we ended up, at first it was really awkward. And he's just like offering me chips, and I'm just kind of looking out the window. And then we got to talking, and he's telling me everything. He's telling me about the life of a village, like something about prostitutions that I'm not going to repeat, and then just insane stories. And like I tell him about my life in New York, and it's like, oh, that's crazy, but this is what it's like here. And we just talked for like hours, like 6 hours, whatever it was. And I was like, I would have never, but that's because I'm like very used to like temporary residence in my life, that I was just kind of gave it a chance to see, like I dug around and like poked around a little bit to see like what will make him talk, because I don't want to sit in the car for 45 minutes in silence with a stranger. And then like it worked, and then he's just telling me insane stories that I personally would have never been exposed to. Yeah, but it's amazing what you can. I think that like solo travel is good in that way, that you just interact with people and you're like you just learn things that you would have never learned. And what's funny about this whole thing is that every time I go somewhere, as often I'm an avid traveler, right? Every time I go, but no matter how many times this happens, I still have this underlying assumptions that we're all sort of similar. That if something works for me, or if I like it, other people will like it. That's just like my ongoing underlying assumption that I always have. And I've been proven wrong on that so many times, like countless times, but it's just I can't shake it for some
and it's
reason.
fascinating
Yeah,
whenever someone's weird because they don't, it's different from your own experience. And so you're trying to figure out
so
why
different.
they are like that.
Yeah, like they have such different perspectives. And if you're relatively like an intelligent person, like you think that you have thought about, let's say, a topic, multiple different angles, different from different perspectives, there's always something, an angle or whatever you could have never thought of. And that's what's fun about human interaction, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And plus for me personally, I think I get a lot of fulfillment from hearing like your story and other people's story, because I live under a rock. I barely travel. I may now, but And it's just like, oh, now that I know what Jen's experience is like in Australia, I guess I don't have visit.
Yeah, you can
It's just
come
like I'll
visit.
live vicariously through your experiences. But
Yeah,
something you said earlier was like this lack of, I don't know what the right word is, but attachment to a certain place.
yeah. Everything's temporary to me. I've always had that mindset since I was a kid.
I think it's freeing, especially since there's just so much things to learn in the world, and being able to like realize you don't want to miss out on learning what's happening on the other side of the world. Because this is why, like, when someone asks like, hey, would you want to live forever, and because there's this whole premise of like life having an ending is so meaningful because it makes life meaningful. But for me, it's like there's always something to learn, and I don't think there is enough lifetimes in the world to learn everything, especially the rate at which things are changing, the way that new things are coming up. I would love to live forever.
Really? I like to be I like the fact that there is an end point. Like
I
I
don't,
think
because I just feel like with technology and how everything's changing, like
yeah,
I want to learn. If I had all the time in the world, I'm gonna jump into every single bunny hole and fall down and try to figure out where the bottom is.
I
That
actually
would
see
be
you
me.
doing that and staying young. You know what I mean? Like Harry Potter, what is that elixir, whatever that
Yeah,
in the book where you can live, it makes you immortal. And I can see you kind of doing that.
yeah.
But like
That way I don't need like a 1 foot ladder.
I think that death, I think what something that I always said that like most of my friends never understood was like if I die tomorrow, I think I'll be okay. I'm not like if somebody told me like, hey
Yeah.
Jen, I'm really sorry, but like you're gonna die tomorrow peacefully, hopefully. Even though every quiz I've ever taken told me that I'm gonna get murdered, basically. Like you know, but like I'm just
All
like
these
oh
BuzzFeed quizzes.
yeah, yeah. I think all the answers are being murdered. That's what I thought. And I had my friend take it and he got something like some illness in a hospital. I was like, that's so much
Yeah,
better
while
than
you're
murder.
asleep.
So like it's I always say that. If somebody told me like I'm gonna die tomorrow, I'm not that. I'm not saying, oh, I'm not afraid of death. It's more just I wouldn't be upset by that. It's, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Because yeah, and they're like, what? I'm like, because I don't cling on to like I think that I cling on to other things because as a kid, like when things are constantly changing, it kind of it impacts you in different ways, but it's more internal, not like external. Like I don't cling on to external stuff. It's internal stuff.
So
And
as an
there's
entrepreneur now though, so you kind of broke the cycle of working in positions in which you that wasn't making you happy. And then now you're on this journey of starting your own business. You're also doing consulting on the side. What bothers you?
bothers me. I think if you kind of if you're like I'm like, oh, what bugs me? Oh, I can name like 1,000 things that bugs me. I'm like, why doesn't this work? Why doesn't this work? That's
Because
literally
you're
like
now at the
startup life.
point in which you're pursuing your own personal legend.
Yeah. Yes, I am.
So
And Levantr, like the wind is blowing in my direction. I
yeah,
don't know. I don't know if that's the right metaphor, but like it's the I think the thing about what's funny about that kind of me trying to answer that question is a lot of things are wrong with not wrong but like a lot of things go wrong every day. I have a problem, like we run into issues every day, right? There's and a lot of things bug me because nothing can be perfect, but because it's I'm pursuing something I love, I'm passionate about, there's genuinely a difference. Like I'm much calmer, I'm less stressed out because I'm just kind of oh I'm gonna keep at it. There's this calm determination, like I'm gonna keep at it no matter what. So there's no reason to freak out. There's no like fear of, oh, I'm gonna get fired. I'm gonna have to like deal with this, deal with that. Like, there's nothing like that, right? That's kind of it. I think sometimes like what, not what bothers me, that makes me that is really challenging about this all like everything is if you are building your own company, there's a most of your journey until you actually succeed. And when I say succeed, I don't mean oh Series A funding, even beyond that, right? Where you become that unicorn, where you are like likely either gonna get sold or gonna get IPO'd, like no doubt about it, right? Unless you get to that level, like most of the journey is super. It's not glamorous at all. Like it is just painful, just grinding,
right? You have to, and everything needs to come from you, meaning like you need to perk yourself up. You need to encourage yourself. Like you need to like, you know what I mean? Like everything is kind of like up to you, and you can't show to your team that like you're upset or you're feeling uncertain, because that's just not, that's your job as a leader. Your ability to take care of your own mental health becomes very critical. And I think that a lot of times, as open as I am about mental health and having a therapist and other stuff, like I often like neglect if I feel like I'm overwhelmed, or I just want to, I was like, I don't want to waste time giving myself a little bit of routine. Like I'm going to keep going at it. No, you gotta know your balance, and then know when to like give yourself a break, not necessarily because you deserve it, because you're never gonna feel that way, but because it will, that will impact not just you, but everyone who's had faith in you, who's working on this startup with you, who's put like something on the line for you, right? Or because of you, or with you. And that's important to remember. So that's, I think, something that I keep trying to get better at, is like learning how to prioritize that for the sake of people that I don't want to let down.
I think one of the things that I was really surprised about what you said when we started talking was how you mentioned the first hire that you'll have will be an IO psychologist.
Yeah.
It's like your own in-house therapist. That's tax deductible as well.
Yeah, but also because I want to have somebody come in and help me. I think that a behavioral, somebody who understands human behavior needs to have needs to have a say in org design rather than an HR department. And I don't have anything against HR professionals, but I'm just saying, right? Like,
what is org design? Can you explain it? Because I don't think a lot of people know what that means.
yeah, if I'm getting like super technical, they will say, oh, like org design is basically how do you bring aligned incentive on an individual versus multiple individuals into, so that you have an aligned outcome. And then those things make pods, and then you keep aligning them until it becomes an organizational, right? Organizational like priority, organizational direction, or goal. There are actually like classes, like college or master courses on it. And I read the textbook, because the textbook's actually really good. And the thing is, like, org design is basically just about how do you, it's going up and down, meaning like, I want to incentivize you and you how to build a one-on-one relationship between different roles, and then build that, create, so that you can create them into units, so that they become, and then they all kind of achieve some certain level of efficiency, synergy, right? Whatever it is, engine. The thing about org design that's really challenging is because technology changes. So because basically org design is one aspect, but org design, to be honest, yes, that's how humans interact. But part of that is basically you have to define the processes where how humans interact and how technology or resources interact. And you design your org that way, right? So they're kind of part of your employees if you kind of think about it, right? Because they accomplish certain things, they assist in certain ways in terms of human interactions. So what's challenging about that is you have to kind of, how to put this? What's challenging about that is that everything's changing so fast. And as you become bigger, it's so much easier to control it when you're small, obviously. When you get bigger, I've never seen a company that does well with org design, just in general. I think Google used to be the best and somehow made that pod individualistic still mentality work, but it's still, people are, now that it's getting to a point so big, that there's now like analysis or around some of its flaws, and that's unlikely going to go away. If you're a big company with a lot of people, that's going to happen. But they kept that going for a while, right? I think that the traditional analyst, middle management, senior management, the hierarchy we have in a lot of corporate environments, I think that model is over. And I felt that way for a long time. And I want to build an organization where we experiment different ways of working, and people know that one group is going to work this way, and I know that's frustrating, and keep iterating and make sure that we're doing it in a way and finding ways to work together better.
So like 10 years from now, HBR is going to publish a case study about how Levantr organized, and you're gonna write a book.
Or they're gonna be like, don't do this.
Don't do
Like
whatever
create,
Jen did. It's like she
yeah,
thought she was being
like,
innovative, but reality is traditional works for a
create
reason.
chaos. Yeah. People had to be in therapy for years after.
Look at all her team members.
They're all like battle scar. And I'm
Yeah,
just
and just like wearing straight jackets because they can't be by themselves or they'll harm themselves.
really dark, you know? Like
So
I felt like a cage rat kind of thing.
yeah.
I don't know. We'll see. I have
Jen starts pivoting to a point where she's locking up her employees and putting shock collars on them with EEG devices to monitor their well-being. And
yeah, that would be, I would love to, but that's not everybody's dream, right? Not the caging up of employees thing, but like wouldn't you love an opportunity to constantly experiment safely?
oh yeah, I went to South by Southwest, and the center had this exhibition that was free for everyone because I didn't have a pass. But I went in and they had this EEG device. So I was experimenting with it, and it was so fascinating because now I could visually see myself meditating and being calm. And I can visually see myself being engaged in a conversation because I was talking with the person that was presenting, and I would glance over and it's wow, so the metric actually shows that I'm engaged and I am genuinely engaged. And so what was fascinating with me is because meditation itself is hard for me, but realizing that when I made myself calm down and understanding how that really feels like and noticing that it was reflective on a screen, I realized, oh, this is what a calm brain is actually is. Because sometimes you meditate, but you would have a million things going in your mind. And it's like, am I meditating? Am I calm? And it's like, but I still have a million things I'm thinking about. And then you're like questioning yourself, am I calm? And then that's not calm. But I had wearing this EEG device made me realize this is what actually calm felt like, mindfulness and all that, like without science, without understanding that, hey, YJ, you actually learn more when you're sleeping. There's a balance of deep rest. Oh, like prior to learning that, I was like, I don't care about sleep. I was like, sleep is just something
I'll
you
sleep
just
when I
kick.
die.
Yeah, I'll just sleep whenever I can or take a lot of caffeine. But realizing that sleep is very important to your learning process because of the neurotransmitter acetylcholine that comes in. Anyways, all that to say is that I saw this EEG device and I was talking with a few people there. I was like, hey, what if we just started a company where all we do would put EEG devices during the hiring process to see if they're bullshitting us or not? It's like, we would love to know. I want people who are genuinely interested in this job, not people who are faking it. I want people who like were born to be in.
Highly illegal. But like, I think today it's illegal, but like, you'll be sued. But I love that idea. But you know, like they say, like they did an experiment where you assume that people that know you, like your family, your brother, right, or whoever, they know you the best, right? So if you ask, you know, a random person versus your family, obviously they're gonna describe you and be able to predict your behavior better.
Yeah.
They did this test where like they asked, like basically had like your family and your close friends or whatever describe your behavior and your character or whatever, and then had like a random group who never they never meet you, they don't have an interaction with you, just did a quick tour of your room as is, just walk around your room just as if they're doing like an open house and walk around. That group did every single time, like that group did better in understanding you. Isn't that interesting? Like, it's not, because like with friends and stuff, they still kind of see to a certain extent who you want them to see, right? And that's just human nature. It's not just any one person. We all do that. But when somebody's seeing your room, going through your book list and what's under your bed and all that stuff, they know who you are much better than your friends can.
If anything, I think your competitive advantage, Jen, is the amount of conscious attention that you place on your customers and your team to make sure that they're doing well and that you're designing something for them as well that aligns with your goals, which is to save people's marriages and relationships.
Yeah.
So,
Not have an explosive fight in Mexico and then have to like get a new hotel in
yeah,
Mexico, right?
Yeah.
I'm
same.
serious. That should be an ad for like February.
No.
So,
But I read this post the other day on like Girls Love Travel, which is I think the biggest Facebook group, a travel group in the world, like over 1 million people, like very active. They have I don't know how many clubhouse rooms a day. And what's funny is this girl posted, have you ever dated somebody that you like in every other aspect? You get along so well, and then but they're like the worst people to travel with. I don't know what to do. And I was like, I'm very curious. Can you like DM me and specify what this person's doing? Because is he like putting lotion and having that explode everywhere? Is he like, you know what I mean? What is he doing? Like he shows us, yeah.
Jen,
like,
this could be great content for your business. You just do like a series of interviews. You know how up in the air they would have a montage of the reasons, like at the end of the whole movie, they're like talking about their experience getting fired
yeah.
and how that like what their new perspective was. You could do the same thing with all these women on that group and just do a little series of, hey, you told me you broke up with Jake because he was perfect, but it came to, so you would just have the series.
Yeah.
It would be great.
I don't know how they're gonna feel about being part of an ad, but that's funny to me. I'm just like, what?
No, it would be great. It's just because one, you're empowering something. You're doing something.
Yeah, I'm just like, hey, plan better.
It could be a message to all the guys like that, hey,
Please
stop
plan
it.
better.
Yeah, please plan better. Hey, this is about if you're wondering why your girl broke up with you, hey, this
Plan
is
a
the reason
trip.
why,
Plan a
because you suck
surprise
at
trip.
traveling.
Yeah. I
Like,
mean, what's funny is I had a conversation with this VC person recently, and because we were fundraising, right? So we're like showing the deck and like getting feedback. And this guy was like, they spent like hours with me because he wants to like show like Levantr to his partners, firm or whatever. And then he was like, I travel a lot. I just don't travel. Like, I don't plan that much. Like, I'm like, whatever. I was like, yeah, most guys are like that. That's how I said it, which is kind of true. I have guy friends who are more psychotic than I am, but like most guys are like chill, just Google
whatever,
stuff.
sure, whatever makes you happy.
Not a bad thing. That's good. And we plan on getting into that market sometime soon, but we're going to start with type A traveler because they're normally the ones dragging everybody into it, right? So to do stuff. So, but the funny thing is, he was just like, how do I put this? He was like, because he used to work at TripAdvisor, he was like, I'm very familiar with a lot of statistics and the problem you're trying to solve. It's just VC is like everybody's kind of the same. I was like, are you trying to say they're like rich old white men? He's, yep. I was like, yep, that's what they are. So like a lot of times they have a travel agent, they have an assistant. They're like very far removed from this being personally relatable. While you can prove the market size, blah, 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 if they can't emotionally relate to that, they might not be able to be as enthusiastic about it, right? Like see the opportunity right away. And I was just like, okay. And he was like, yeah, because I'm kind of skeptical because I had numbers. Then like I'm skeptical, and I started pulling up like every single, and he could see like it was from somebody else, like an email address. Like I started pulling all these itineraries from people, or people were like voting using like Excel sheets. Like they're like say yes or no. It's like an event. It had like a name per column, and they had to put yes or no. And like this is what people are doing. And he was like, holy shit, I didn't know that. And I was like, yeah, because you're a male. And like guys are like, oh, my girlfriend will do it. Every time I talk to an investor today, they're like, my wife is she's a planner and send me this deck or file that is insane, but it's the wife.
You should start your pitch deck because I know you're looking for investors, and if anyone's an investor and would like to invest in a really cool software that's like Pinterest / Excel / Trello, having a baby and all they care about is travel. But you should start off your pitch deck with a poll that you pull with all the females that you've done. It's like, the reason why I broke up with my boyfriend 50% is because they suck at traveling.
They never plan shit.
Yeah.
You know, they're like, oh, it'll work out. no, honey, you gotta make a reservation, okay? Like,
It's like, hey, I would even propose to the guy if he was better at planning.
yeah,
Like, you should
yeah.
just have a bunch of like questions with polls under it. It's just like, hey, this is why my business is gonna help society.
Save marriages, yours included, you know? You're
Oh,
welcome.
that's great.
Yeah. Like, that's how my parents used to fight. My parents like are like super happily married, but they used to fight
Oh
all the
my
time when they
God.
travel.
No, you're right.
Because my dad is so annoying. He's like, oh, I forgot this. I didn't know.
I don't know if this is
I
Asian. Maybe
reminded
it
you
might
3
be
times.
everyone. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm just like, Dad, like you forgot our socks. And as we're going skiing, like I don't want to get frostbite. So we're gonna now have to drive somewhere far away to buy socks. Like something stupid like that. And my mom's just get so irritated. Like I reminded you like 3 times. I called like as you're leaving the house. La 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 la. We're all familiar with like those fights that your parents have when you're traveling, right? As a family.
And then your mom would take forever because she says she needs to use the restroom and grab one more thing. And then 30 minutes later, you're still sitting in the car. And it's,
Yeah, what
it's
did you
like, I thought you just said you
call?
needed one thing and then you come out with 5 bags. Are we moving? Every, so,
The one thing that I could really relate to my brother about is I don't like shopping. And I normally like looking whatever, like the typical stuff, but I hate shopping. So when I go shopping with my mom, it's the most stressful experience of my life. I'm just like, can you just I can't, she's like, try this. Yeah, try. I'm just like, no, mom. I'm gonna pick 2 things. We're gonna do A/B tests. Okay, we're not doing multivariate tests. Okay, I'm not doing that. Like, and it's just like this argument.
oh, I
Right?
remember as a kid, I would just go up and put like horse blinders. It's like, hey, mom, what did we come here for? Stop looking around. It's like, I would just hold her face. It's like, stop. Just,
Yeah, concentrate, please. Because like, have you seen that map of a man, like a guy, like going shopping in a mall, and it's like he's just like going a straight line, following this one line, it's one path, and women are just like, like every floor, like that's my mom. It drives me nuts, and I'm just like, I'm just gonna online shop because at least I have
but
control over the
but it's
situation.
cool because like when you're showing me like how your business is progressing, like you're doing everything to kind of analyze, like making sure you're catering to all different types of travelers or how they plan things.
Yeah, it's the funny thing is, I told you this right last time we spoke, which was 2 weeks ago, where we have a user, and mind you, we're targeting mostly women, some men, but mostly women who are type A travel like planners, right? So we have a user who's literally like sending me like 15 emails, and I love her. She's amazing. Just like doing this bullet point by bullet point, like bunch of feedback and proofreading our website to make sure that there are no error because she really wants us to succeed. Like she really
How
wants us
did
to
you
be
get
how
her?
does she do? I got her. This is really sketchy thing that we did. And I was like, this is either gonna work, one of the smartest things I've ever done, or gonna backfire hardcore, which was like there are sites like respondent.io, the user testing, where you basically interact with people who are willing to test your product, provide feedback, like a research platform. We got like 300 something applicants for our study where we're interviewing 2 people. So obviously we couldn't interview everybody. So when we were done with the study, we notified them and said, hey, like we're done with the study. Unfortunately, like we couldn't get through everybody, but the product itself is launching. So if you want to try it out, if this is something of interest to you, try it out because we are going to be interviewing certain active users, but only if downloaded if you're interviewing it, if you're like interested, whatever. And it message every single person. Some people are just like, is this a study? Am I going to get paid? You know what I mean? Some people like that. But most people are like, oh, this is great. Because the way we designed our study was like we attracted our target profiles. Those are the people we want to interview. So I was just like, this is a great free random marketing channel. And we had about like 40% conversion from that and for free. It was free. And then the user that I just mentioned, the one who went on our website and read our privacy terms and conditions to proofread it, no joke, and then pointed out to me some errors. And then she like speculated like different ways, like possible reasons why we would have done it on purpose And I was like, no, sorry, no, you were being too kind. That was an error. But like, like there was a mistake. But like she went in that deep. She was one of those users that we got from that site. And I think that our instinct was right to go after people like that. And you get creative and you find different things. The good thing about startup is that there's kind of a minimal consequence. There's not a lot of consequences to your actions in a way. Like you can make mistakes and it will be forgotten and forgiven.
Unlike corporations.
Yeah, where you get sued and sanctioned, I don't know what it is, penalized, fined, whatever it is. Yeah. So that's an advantage to startup, right? But it's just, that's how we got users, because like we didn't want to use paid marketing 100% of the time, and we got to test out different channels, right? Yeah. It's fun stuff. Yeah.
It's interesting too. And I would imagine when you finally had this person just like engaging in every single aspect of your website, it must have felt great. And I remember even like for my work, I would save these emails that I can like refer back to. Like when I'm struggling, hey, there was someone that believed in me.
Yeah. When she was like, I just want you to succeed, because I know I see the potential. I see what this could do, accomplish. And she was just like, you guys are gonna rock the travel industry with the self-planning tools. Like, you have no idea. And what was actually really powerful about that was, I don't know if I've ever shown it to you, but you've seen our explainer video, right? That we created after the fancy one that we have. When I first started and I had I learned how to use Figma to create mock-ups or whatever, I created like a 3-minute video.
What do you not know how to do, Jen? I mean,
Figma is super easy. Okay. But like I created that 3-minute video to apply to accelerators to communicate what we were trying to do. The language that I use, this super user emails me the other day, and she's like, you have no idea how much time this is going to save me not having to use spreadsheets, WhatsApp, Google Doc, and something else. And I was just like, watch my video that I created last June, maybe, or July. I use the exact same language, like exact same wording that she used 2 weeks ago. She emailed me. And to me, that was huge, because I'm like, okay, it was one person, but like that validates like that we're solving a problem that exists for users. Not all users, some people. And that's what startups are about. You don't solve a problem for everybody. You solve a problem for some people.
I think it's so important to share your story, because when you start telling me about this user who's doing all these software, it made me think back to my little board game business, when we would have customers like, hey, have you made this type of product line yet that for the same game? Because there's 4 different extensions or expansions for this board game. And they would say, hey, we really love your pieces. We love the stuff that you designed. When are you going to come out with Explorers and Pirates? And like, crap, we gotta keep expanding. And they would write these like paragraphs of stuff about how they've been using it for their business, or for their business, for their family.
Yeah, it matters. It's in the middle of a pandemic. You're giving them like excitement.
And I was like, I'm not passionate about this business. It's just like, it's board game pieces. I'm just 3D printing them, and it's something that I just enjoy doing. But the way that you appreciate this, I know for you, it's like you love traveling and bringing that passion and that problem for people. But for me, it was like when people like tell you how much they appreciate you for all the stuff that you're working on, and you didn't put a lot of energy to it. And it's like, wow, I'm actually doing something. I think for me, it's especially if you've been doing it every single day.
Yeah. But the thing is, it matters, right? You might not be passionate about board game pieces, but you are passionate about people like
having fun and enjoying their lives.
Fun and like thinking different ways. And board game does that. Have you ever played Harry Potter board games? It's really hard. It's insane. Like I played it with my friends once, and we're just like, this is fucking hard. Like it's intense, and it gets your brain going. It brings people together, right? Every time you go on a ski trip, every time you go on any trip, like board game kind of comes with it, right? It has this bonding experience. This is like this impromptu like team building exercise, right?
For those customers, you forget what you're doing this for.
Yeah, because you look at the what's like in front of you, which is all these pieces. You're
Yeah.
not passionate about that. You're passionate about how it impacts people. And especially in the middle of a pandemic, when people are just like so cooped up, so frustrated, right? A lot of people are like going through financial difficulties, emotional difficulties, right? Like it helps. And I think that's kind
Yeah.
of, that's what should drive your passion at the end of the day.
Reminds you of what you started this for the first place.
Yeah. Yeah. And if there's somebody that's benefiting from it, it's a business worth pursuing. That's my
Kind of like
opinion.
The Alchemist, where the guy realized he was a sheep herder and realized why he did this in the first place. And I don't know. Hey, I did this because I want to travel.
I mean, honestly, I think what's funny is every time I talk to somebody, like people who read that book, like everyone kind of tells me different thing. I think they took away from it. So you're kind of, let me just ask you, what was
Sure.
your kind of main takeaway?
That's hard. There's a lot of things that I felt like reading along the journey. I was like, I feel like reading this book kind of made me understand a lot of things of the reason why you did the things that you're doing. And just listening to you talk just, I think, makes me appreciate what you do even more for society and for the people around you. Because reading that book made me realize what I like to do for other people too is kind of what the king did for him.
Yeah.
And I think
Give
it's
us
so
some
important.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, just there's at certain points in people's life, I feel if they were just given the right words of encouragement.
100%. Yeah. You can get this. Here's a destination that exists. That is
Yeah,
neat. Yeah.
you're passionate about something and you can succeed. And if it just means spending a few hours of my time to tell you that you have what's already required to make it happen, then
Yeah.
I don't mind spending 2 hours of my time if it might potentially change your life for the better.
Yeah. And I think that's important, right? Like I remember like when I was really stressed I think a while ago, I was like really stressed because we're like preparing for like MVP launch. And I remember you just like, Jen, yeah, you're doing the right things. You're on the right track. That was like, that meant a lot, right? Because you're like, we're constantly operating in darkness. We don't really know where we're going and like constantly doubting yourself. It's hard to see clearly. And somebody's just kind of giving you like, hey, keep going in this direction. It's a little nudge. It helps because sometimes like you don't really know where you are, like where you stand in terms in relation to where you want to get to. But what's funny is for me, what I took away from that book was because I moved around a lot and like, I told you everything felt transient. I have always had a mentality like this is temporary. Like I think part of the reason why I felt really unhappy in New York was because towards the end, like it was, and it really confused my friend because I was like so quintessentially like one of those people. I don't drive. So they're like, she can't survive anywhere else. Like she'll die. Like, like she's like, I don't know how to drive. I don't want to drive. And I'm just kind of like very quintessentially New York, super blunt. And when I left, it was surprising. But one thing I felt was at some point I was just like, I don't really know where I belong. And I don't mean that in a weird, I don't really, get along. I get along with everyone in New York, wherever, fine. And I love them and like everything. But it's just, I was like, I don't feel quite like I know where my home is. And I used to just think that because I moved around a lot, right? But when I read The Alchemist, and I read that book like several times, after a while, the thing that he does, basically, he gets to Egypt, he gets his ass kicked by some random bullies, and then he hears
Steals
them
his
talking.
money.
Yeah, and then still is towards the end, and then they're like takes everything, and it's like, oh, like the treasure that you're looking for doesn't exist. Somebody said like it took it, it hid it, it's in some barn, or whatever, and he realizes that the barn that they're talking about is his home, right, where he used to live. So he basically journeys all the way there. Probably 3 years later, he comes back, and then that's where he finds what he was looking for. That resonated with me because that's when I really realized my home doesn't have to be a place. Like it needs to be like within, but in a certain way. Like I feel at home when I move around. And that's just the environment I just need to create for myself because that's where I feel comfortable. And I was like, oh, that's what it is. Ever since kind of like realizing stuff like that, I became a lot happier. And because I'm just kind of like, now I understand myself better, and I'm able to create an environment that's suitable for me, instead of trying to like follow this path that I thought that I had to follow, right? Just being settled in one place, blah, blah, blah. So I'm not designed for that. I don't like staying in one city too long. I get antsy. So that's what it is. And I feel much more at home, despite the fact that none of my friends are here. None of my family's here, right? I think that was an important takeaway, that like you are able to find home.
They should create an up in air version where the main character is you, because the more you talk about traveling, it's, oh, I'm surrounded by people.
Yeah, I have friends everywhere.
Yeah. I didn't like the way the ending. I feel like there could be an alternative universe where he's just happy. Just, hey, wear this backpack. Imagine putting everything that you own on this backpack and carrying it with you everywhere you go. Pretty heavy, isn't it? Because you're putting your house.
No, if I go, even when I go on a 3-day trip, I have a giant suitcase I have to check in, because I don't know how to pack correctly, because I have FOMO about everything. So I'm just like, I'm going to pack everything. And then I always miss at least one thing. So yeah, that's not gonna be me, but I get what you mean. But it's just you know what I mean? Like, it's just like most of my friends. And what's funny is when I meet other military kids or other international school kids that have like moved around because of their parents, like we vibe so well, because we understand what it's like growing up in that environment and what that does to your psyche, and how undesirable this typical went to the same high school, stay forever, like in one place, and that kind of life sounds to us, and that we don't want to settle. Not that we don't want to settle in general, meaning like we don't want to get married. It's just more, we just don't want to settle in one place. I think that's, and once you kind of start to realize that's not, just because what you want is something slightly different from what most people want, doesn't mean you're damaged or whatever. Like once you start to accept that a little bit, like you become a lot freer. And like when I talk to people with similar backgrounds, they get that. It's just harder for some of my friends to understand, who kind of come from like, even my friends in New York, most of them like have been in New York most of like their whole life. They grew up in Westchester, moved to the city, 45 minutes away.
Because now that I think about it too, like the people that you're clicking with, or your tribe, were also people that when you were younger was also all over the place. So until you started traveling and being vocal about, hey, this is who I am, it was hard to meet those type of people and realize that, oh, I'm not weird. I'm not like this person that can't fit into the whole world. It's just I hadn't met those people yet.
Yeah, because you know how you talk about, like you said, you don't want to talk about anything other than business. It's not because you're like snobby or anything. You just, that's your interest, and that's what gets you going, right? But people are like, oh, that's weird. What's great about this, the age of internet, not to sound like a grandpa, but like the age of internet, is that like you are really able to form communities, and you realize how many communities there are. Just think about the fact that there are subthread like communities on Reddit about Lego building. That's it. That's all they talk about. You know what I mean? Like you start to realize that people have other interests, and it becomes more and more acceptable and okay to have interests that are not universally common, right? Universally known. And like recently I met a lot of digital nomads, and I've accepted that lifestyle, like where I freelance and I just move around. I don't really need to have a home, location agnostic, pros and cons to it. But like the moment I met more and more people, like it's just encouraging, and you don't feel as lonely.
What would you say would be like something you wish you knew as a kid, or something that you wish you learned early on? It's an advice that you would give to other people.
I think, not to get so deep, is I only started talking about this publicly probably a few weeks ago. Like I was diagnosed with ADHD very early when I was a kid. And when you're really young, they don't know if it's an OCD or Asperger or autism. Like they don't know, right? Like they're kind of waiting for you to develop a little bit to see. So like that had a huge impact in terms of like how I felt about myself. And I realized 30 years later, like I should talk about this. We should talk more about it. So there's awareness being formed that if you're a kid and you always kind of feel like you're obsessing over certain things and you have really weird quirks. Like I used to not be able to walk up the stairs. Like I had to start with my left foot if I'm walking up the stairs. If I didn't, then I walk back down and then do it all over again. Yes, that's weird as fuck. But it comes with strength. And I met this psychiatrist that like basically told me, he was like, you do this, right? You see things in different colors and like you see things in different movements. And you always thought that was weird, right? I was like, yeah, no, Winston Churchill had that. Their notebooks and there's proof that he actually had ADHD and similar symptoms, and the way he approached that problem is what you do today. And then that's when I realized like, oh, it's just like people just being freaked out by other people who are just really different. And I just want to say, if you ever suffer with, or if you've been diagnosed with ADHD or anything like that, like ADHD, it's called disorder, but I believe that's a misnomer. It just makes you different. Your brain works in different ways. It makes you see connections in a way at a speed that normal people just can't follow. So stop focusing on trying to hide it and suppress it. Focus on how to harness it and optimize it.
Yeah,
is what I would say.
Well, we've been talking for almost 2 hours, Jen. I guess something that I usually end my conversations with is why should people reach out to you?
I don't know. I don't want to.
So one of them would be Levantr, if you're interested.
Yeah. No, yeah. I don't want to presume. If you have stories that you just want to chat and talk about, anything that I spoke about that you either something that you provoke some thoughts or emotions in you, happy to talk and chat without any particular objective. But if you're interested in Levantr, if you're interested in travel tech, definitely reach out. If you're interested in starting a company, don't know where to start, let me know. Happy to help. If you're suffering with different types of emotional issues that I've touched upon, like ADHD and other things that you're struggling with, definitely reach out, because I'll be more than happy to hop on a call and talk through that.
And what kind of people would you like to reach out to? And I know one of them is investors.
Yeah, honestly, I think that the more I don't find it easy to talk about this. I find you probably know me at this time, like how I am, how I feel every day, better than most of my friends do, like close friends do. Because it's difficult to talk to your friends about what you're working on because they don't really get it. It's not that they're not supportive, they don't really know what you're doing. So like, it's difficult. So like meeting just any other like-minded founders or people who are just interested in innovation, like interested in startup like you, YJ, like it becomes like part of my support system. Like they become part of my support system. And that's really important. Like when you're starting, like you basically have to have a whole new support system of entrepreneurs that understand what you're going through. So I would love to reach out to other people, especially if you're in travel tech. It's a difficult market, and just connect and just.
What would you like to learn more of for your business specifically? Or
I would love to better understand what the travel providers, like tour operators, travel agents are doing today. I just spoke to somebody and his company laid off like 90% of their employees. I know this is hard times. So like I want to see what their thoughts are in terms of helping the industry recover what they need. Government's obviously theoretically providing billions of dollars and injecting more than any other industry that I know, injecting money into this, but like, how is that helping, right?
Yeah.
I would love to understand their pain points more.
And for everyone else, there is a wait list, but
Actually, we are no longer.
Oh, really?
I have a wait list. Yeah, we haven't got like a fully public. We haven't made any announcement in terms of public release because that's coming a little bit later. But if you go to our website, Levantr, Levantr.com, you can just sign up directly and start using the product now. We don't have a wait list anymore.
Oh, well, Well, that's cool too. But I was telling my friends, hey, I could sneak you in. So
You know
it's
what?
like,
I'll give them a different type of VIP treatment.
yeah.
You email me and mention your name, I'll respond within 24
So,
hours.
it's fine. They don't treat them like regular people.
No, I'm serious. Just that I have YJ in the head, like, in the subject line, and then you'll get
And you'll get
premium
something.
treatment. Like, it will just get forwarded to a folder where a bunch of people check regularly. Yeah.
No, it's really cool, Jen. I'm really excited for you. Thanks for introducing me to the book, The Alchemist. And personally, this book came in a really pivotal time of what I'm going through. So just to say, I appreciate I'm getting a lot from you. And I don't know what I'm helping you with, but
A lot.
it helps.
You
Great.
teach about sales, you use.
Whatever. Okay, it's okay. This is about you. I don't like that's not.
No, I'm serious. But I think it's also always hard to kind of see what you're giving to other people unless they tell you, right? So I'm telling you, you're very helpful. So thank you.
Thanks. Didn't finish his bottle, but I think I'm good. Jen, can't wait to talk with you in 2 weeks. And in the meantime, you can always message me for anything else, and we'll keep you posted. Can't wait to hear how everything turns out.
Sounds good. Thanks so much.
Anytime, and have a good night.
I'm going to
Talk
bed
you.
now.
Bye.